21 gospel legends who vanished from the spotlight after one iconic hit. These gospel legends once moved the world with just one song, then disappeared without a trace. Their voices could lift spirits, bring tears, and make entire congregations rise to their feet. But after one unforgettable hit, they faded from the spotlight, leaving fans wondering, what really happened? Today, we uncover the stories of 21 gospel legends who changed lives with their music, and then vanished from the stage forever.
Lucy Campbell.
Lucy Campbell was a true pioneer, a woman who helped shape the very soul of gospel music long before most people even knew her name. Born in 1885, at a time when opportunities for black women were painfully limited, she refused to let the world define her. Campbell wasn't just a singer, she was a gifted songwriter, devoted teacher, and visionary leader who believed gospel music could heal and unite. She became one of the first women to write and publish gospel songs, an extraordinary achievement in an era when women's voices were often silenced. Her most beloved work, Something Within, written in the early 1900s, spread like wildfire through churches across America. The song's message, that true faith comes from deep inside, from something within, struck a chord with countless believers and remains a gospel classic today. Yet, despite her influence, few people knew her name. Campbell never chased fame or fortune. Her mission wasn't to top charts, it was to fill churches with music that stirred the spirit. Most of her songs were printed in hymn books, not pressed on records, which kept her out of the spotlight but ensured her message lived on in Sunday services everywhere. Beyond her music, Campbell was a force for progress. She helped establish the National Baptist Convention's music department, training choirs and nurturing future gospel greats. Many legends who followed stood on the foundation she built. But unlike the stars of today, Lucy Campbell wasn't interested in self-promotion. Her legacy wasn't measured in applause, it was written in faith, melody, and the countless hearts her music touched.
Willie Mae Ford Smith.
Willie Mae Ford Smith was a gospel legend, but not in the way most people think. She didn't chase fame, record deals, or sold-out arenas. Instead, she dedicated her entire life to the church, singing with soul-stirring conviction and mentoring generations of young gospel singers who would carry her message forward. Her rendition of Peace in the Valley, performed at countless church conventions, could move entire congregations to tears. When Willie Mae sang, it wasn't about applause, it was about awakening faith. Every note was a prayer, every breath a bridge between heaven and earth. Born in 1904 in Mississippi and raised in St. Louis, Willie Mae rose to prominence during the 1930s and 1940s, earning deep respect within church circles across America. Yet, she never cared for the spotlight. To her, gospel music was sacred, a divine calling, not a business. Even as her friends like Mahalia Jackson found mainstream success, Willie Mae refused to commercialize her gift. She wouldn't sing in nightclubs or sign with record labels. Her heart belonged to the pulpit, not the stage. That choice meant she never became a household name. But among those who heard her voice echo through the walls of a church, Willie Mae Ford Smith wasn't just a singer. She was a vessel of spirit, a woman who kept gospel music pure and holy. Brother Joe May. Brother Joe May earned the nickname the Thunderbolt of the Midwest, and once you hear him sing, you understand why. When his voice hit the air, it was like lightning cracked through the room, booming, electric, and impossible to ignore. Born in 1912 in Mississippi, he grew up singing in church like so many gospel greats. But what set Joe apart wasn't just his faith, it was the fire in his delivery. Every note he sang carried raw emotion, deep soul, and pure power. By the late 1940s and early 50s, Brother Joe May had become one of gospel's brightest voices, especially after signing with Specialty Records. His signature song, Search Me Lord, became an anthem, soaring through churches and hearts alike. Even people who weren't into gospel couldn't help but be moved by his thunderous sound. Yet despite his incredible gift, Brother Joe never crossed into the mainstream. He stayed rooted in the gospel circuit, performing in churches and smaller venues across the country. Part of that was by choice. He refused to dilute his message just to please pop audiences. In an era when gospel stars rarely broke through to wider fame, he remained steadfast in his calling. As the years went on, health problems began to slow him down, and by the late 1950s, a new generation of gospel voices began to take the spotlight. Still, for those who heard him, Brother Joe May was unforgettable, a man whose voice could shake the heavens and stir the soul. Even decades later, his thunder still echoes through gospel history. Inez Andrews. Inez Andrews had a voice so powerful it could lift an entire congregation to its feet. Born to sing the gospel, she first rose to prominence with the Caravans, a legendary group that also featured icons like Shirley Caesar and Albertina Walker. Yet even among giants, Inez stood out. Her deep, resonant tone carried both the thunder of faith and the tenderness of storytelling, every note sounding like it came straight from her soul. Her defining moment came with the unforgettable "Lord, Don't Move That Mountain." This wasn't just another gospel hit, it was a prayer set to music. The message was profound. Don't ask God to remove your struggles, ask Him for the strength to overcome them. That honesty struck a chord with people everywhere. It wasn't about easy faith, it was about tested faith, the kind that endures when life gets hard. The song made Inez a household name in the gospel world. She toured the country, filled churches with her powerful presence, and graced countless gospel television programs. But while she continued to record and perform for decades, none of her later works ever reached the same heights. By the 1980s and 90s, gospel music was shifting toward a more upbeat, contemporary sound. Inez, however, stayed true to her roots. Her music remained raw, soulful, and unapologetically traditional. That choice came at a cost. She preferred the intimacy of church choirs over the flash of big concerts, which made her less visible to younger audiences. Still, for those who heard her sing, she remained unforgettable, a voice that didn't just entertain but ministered, echoing long after the final amen.
F.C. Barnes.
F.C. Barnes wasn't just a preacher, he was a voice that carried faith through generations. Born and raised in North Carolina, Reverend Barnes became a household name for one unforgettable reason: rough side of the mountain. If you grew up anywhere near a gospel church in the 80s or 90s, chances are you've heard that song. Maybe blasting from a Sunday radio show, echoing through a church choir, or playing softly at a family reunion or funeral. Released in 1983 as a duet with Janice Brown, the song told a simple yet powerful truth: that life's journey is tough, but with unwavering faith, you can climb even the roughest mountain. Its message of endurance and trust in God struck deep, especially among older generations of churchgoers who found strength in every lyric. The record went gold, a rare and remarkable feat for a gospel song at the time. But unlike many artists who chase fame after a hit, Reverend Barnes stayed grounded. He never left his small church in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and rarely went on big tours. His heart was in the pulpit first, and the stage second. To him, singing was just another way to preach. Though he released more music in the years that followed, nothing ever matched the timeless magic of Rough Side of the Mountain. As newer gospel stars emerged and styles evolved, Barnes gradually faded from the national spotlight. Yet in his own community, he remained a cherished figure, a man of faith whose voice and message still echo through the generations.
Rev. Janice Brown.
Rev. Janice Brown will always be remembered for her unforgettable duet "Rough Side of the Mountain" with Reverend F.C. Barnes, a song that became a timeless gospel classic. Her voice was gentle yet powerful, perfectly complementing Barnes' deep, preacher-like tone. Together, they created a sound that reached beyond church walls and touched millions of hearts across generations. Before stepping into the world of gospel music, Janice was a humble schoolteacher, a woman who never dreamed of fame or fortune. She simply loved singing for the Lord on Sunday mornings. When she joined Reverend Barnes in recording that now legendary song, her goal wasn't to chase stardom. She just wanted to share her faith through music. The song's success brought her brief recognition in the gospel world. She recorded several more albums and toured with Reverend Barnes, but Janice never sought the spotlight. She turned down big label offers, choosing instead to stay grounded in her calling as a teacher, a mother, and a servant of God. As time passed and fame faded, Janice gracefully stepped back from the stage. Yet, even if most people remember her for just that one duet, its message of faith and perseverance continues to inspire countless believers. Her legacy reminds us that sometimes the greatest impact doesn't come from chasing fame, but from living faithfully and singing from the soul. And speaking of faith and passion, our next singer proved that true purpose never grows old, and that music, when born from the heart, never dies. Elder Goldwire McClendon. Elder Goldwire McClendon is living proof that passion doesn't come with an expiration date. At 79 years old, when most people are slowing down, he stepped into the national spotlight as a finalist on Season 3 of BET's Sunday Best. The moment he opened his mouth, the audience was stunned. His voice, rich, powerful, and overflowing with emotion, carried the kind of soul that only comes from a lifetime of faith and experience. Goldwire didn't rely on flashy runs or showy theatrics. Every note he sang came from the heart. You could feel his devotion in every lyric, as if he was testifying through music. Viewers couldn't believe that a man nearly 80 could deliver such power, grace, and energy. He didn't win the top prize, he came in second, but in truth, he won something far greater: the love and admiration of millions. Overnight, he became a symbol of perseverance and purpose. For a time, it seemed like Elder McClendon was on the verge of a late career breakthrough. He released an album and performed at gospel events, inspiring countless fans along the way. Yet, the mainstream spotlight slowly faded. Not because his talent dimmed, but because the industry rarely makes room for older artists, no matter how extraordinary they are. Still, his story remains a shining reminder that it's never too late to chase your dream, touch hearts, and glorify God through music.
Rev. Timothy Wright. Rev.
Timothy Wright wasn't just a gospel singer, he was a force of nature. During the 1990s and early 2000s, his booming voice, heartfelt songwriting, and soul-stirring leadership made him one of gospel music's most powerful figures. A pastor, choir director, and performer rolled into one, Wright had the rare ability to make an entire congregation feel heaven move. His timeless hit, Come Thou Almighty King, became a church anthem, echoing through sanctuaries across America. His style wasn't about flash or fame, it was pure worship, filled with spirit, grit, and old-school gospel fire. Wright's music carried truth. He led massive choirs with unmatched energy, inspiring both newcomers and seasoned believers. Throughout his career, he worked alongside gospel greats like Richard Smallwood and Hezekiah Walker, cementing his place among the legends. But in 2008, tragedy struck. While returning home from a church event with his wife Betty and their grandson, a wrong-way driver crashed head-on into their car. Betty and their grandson died instantly. Reverend Wright survived but suffered critical injuries that left him hospitalized for months. The gospel community united in prayer, hoping for a miracle. But the pain was too deep, the wounds too severe. A year later, in 2009, Reverend Timothy Wright passed away from complications related to the accident. His death left a silence in gospel music that still echoes today, a reminder that behind every song of praise, there's a story of sacrifice, faith, and unshakable devotion.
Orlando Draper.
Orlando Draper was a gospel powerhouse whose energy, creativity, and musical brilliance defined 1990s gospel music. A native of Memphis, Draper had an unmatched gift for turning choirs into living, breathing instruments of joy. His dynamic arrangements, thunderous harmonies, and electric stage presence transformed every performance into an experience. His most iconic song, My Soul Doth Magnify the Lord, remains a timeless anthem, vibrant, soulful, and guaranteed to lift spirits the moment the first note hits. At a young age, Draper founded the Associates, a choir that quickly took the gospel world by storm with their fiery passion and precision. Under his leadership, they brought gospel to grand stages, winning major awards, collaborating with top gospel artists, and even performing at the White House for President Bill Clinton. In 1999, Draper's excellence was recognized with a Grammy Award for Best Gospel Choir or Chorus Album, a crowning moment for a man still in his early 30s. But just as his star was reaching its brightest point, tragedy struck. That same year, Draper was diagnosed with kidney failure. Within months, the gospel world lost one of its most visionary talents. He was only 34 years old. His sudden passing sent shockwaves through the community, a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest lights can burn out too soon. Yet Orlando Draper's spirit lives on in every booming choir, every joyful hallelujah, and every believer whose soul still magnifies the Lord.
LaShawn Pace.
LaShawn Pace had a voice that could shake your soul and send chills racing down your spine. When she sang, I Know I've Been Changed, it didn't feel like a performance, it felt like a spiritual experience. Every note carried raw emotion, as if she was pouring her entire heart into every breath. That song became her signature hit and one of the most powerful gospel anthems of the 1990s. Born into a deeply musical family, LaShawn and her sisters formed the renowned gospel group, the Anointed Pace Sisters, in Atlanta, Georgia. From the moment she opened her mouth, people knew her voice was different, commanding, heartfelt, and alive with emotion. She could move from a whisper to a wail in seconds, pulling the congregation right into the presence of God. In the early 1990s, LaShawn stepped into the spotlight as a solo artist with her debut album, He Lives. That's when I Know I've Been Changed exploded across the gospel world. But its reach didn't stop at the church walls. People everywhere felt its power. It became a song you'd hear in almost every black church at some point, a timeless declaration of faith and redemption. Though she never reached the same level of mainstream fame again, LaShawn continued creating music that touched hearts. Her fans, the faithful ones who had been with her from the start, never left her side. Behind the glory, though, was a woman who faced real pain. She endured health struggles, personal heartbreaks, and the devastating loss of her daughter. Yet through every storm, LaShawn Pace never lost her faith. She kept singing, kept believing, and kept reminding the world that her voice, and her spirit, were truly anointed.
James Cleveland.
James Cleveland more possessed a voice so powerful it could stop you in your tracks. When he sang, you didn't just hear the music, you felt it deep in your soul. His electrifying live performance of It Ain't Over Till God Says It's Over with the Mississippi Mass Choir remains one of the most legendary moments in gospel history. The raw emotion, the fiery delivery, the way every shout seemed to come straight from his spirit, it was pure, unforgettable power. Born with a gift that blended the preacher's conviction and the singer's soul, Moore began performing as a child and quickly rose through the ranks of gospel music. By the late 1980s, when he released It Ain't Over, the song became more than a hit. It became a lifeline for countless believers struggling through dark times. It reminded everyone that no matter how hopeless things seemed, God still had the final word. For years, Reverend Moore was a cornerstone of the gospel world. He performed with major choirs, released acclaimed albums, and even won stellar awards. But then, almost silently, he faded from the spotlight. It wasn't because his voice had lost its fire, it was his health that dimmed his stage light. Battling diabetes for years, Moore eventually lost his eyesight and suffered severe complications. Touring and recording became impossible, and slowly, the world heard less and less from the man whose voice once shook the rafters of churches across America. Yet, even in silence, his legacy speaks volumes, a reminder that faith, once sung from the soul, never truly fades.
Margaret Allison.
Margaret Allison, the soulful voice behind the angelic gospel singers, helped shape the very foundation of modern gospel music. Though they never reached mainstream superstardom, their influence ran deep and lasting. Their breakout hit, Touch Me Lord Jesus, released in 1947, was nothing short of divine. Gentle yet powerful, the song captured hearts with its emotional depth and spiritual purity. Listeners felt it in their bones. It wasn't just music, it was ministry. At a time when the music industry offered little space for women, especially black women, Margaret and her group broke barriers. As one of the first all-female gospel groups to record and tour nationwide, they became pioneers for generations to come. They sang in churches, community centers, and on the radio, spreading messages of faith and resilience far beyond the pulpit. Despite their hit single success, the group never chased fame or fortune. They stayed close to their roots, performing mainly in church circles and focusing on their mission rather than commercial glory. Margaret led the group with grace and devotion for over 6 decades, an extraordinary feat in an industry where most careers fade fast. Her unwavering dedication to gospel music continued until her passing in 2008, and though the angelic gospel singers carried on, nothing ever quite matched the timeless magic of their first masterpiece. And if gospel storytelling were an Olympic sport, our next artist would have walked away with the gold every single time.
Dorothy Norwood.
Dorothy Norwood isn't just a gospel singer, she's a storyteller, a truth-teller, and a force of raw emotion. Her songs don't just play, they unfold like mini-dramas, each packed with heart, faith, and humanity. In the 1990s, she captivated audiences with her unique story song style, especially with her hit inspired by the life of fellow gospel singer Denise Williams. That song didn't just chart, it cemented her reputation as the world's greatest gospel storyteller. And honestly, no title could fit her better. Dorothy's music was never about fancy runs or vocal perfection. It was about truth. Her songs spoke to everyday struggles, heartbreak, hope, redemption, and victory, often weaving spoken-word moments right into the melody. She would pause mid-song to talk directly to her listeners, as if she were sitting in their living room, sharing a testimony. It was real, intimate, and unforgettable. Norwood's journey began with the legendary gospel group The Caravans, where she sang alongside icons like Albertina Walker and Shirley Caesar. But she soon stepped out on her own, blending traditional gospel roots with a bold, narrative-driven sound that felt like church, theater, and soul all rolled into one. Her career soared in the 1990s when gospel music began crossing into the mainstream. Fans were drawn to her authenticity. Her songs didn't just inspire faith, they reflected life itself. Massive choirs, powerful testimonies, and vivid storytelling made every performance an experience. Yet, as the gospel scene shifted toward younger, more contemporary sounds, Dorothy's name slowly faded from mainstream attention. She kept recording, kept ministering, and kept telling stories, even if the spotlight moved on. Her sound might be considered old school now, but her impact remains timeless. Dorothy Norwood didn't just sing gospel, she lived it, and in doing so, she made sure her stories would echo for generations.
Cleophas Robinson.
Cleophas Robinson's voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. Smooth, powerful, and overflowing with spirit, he was one of those old-school gospel singers who could set an entire church on fire without ever touching a microphone. Born in 1932 in Mississippi, Robinson began singing as a teenager and quickly became known not just for his music, but for his ministry. He was the singing pastor, blending fiery preaching with soul-stirring melodies that turned every performance into a revival. His signature song, Wrapped Up, Tied Up, Tangled Up, became an anthem in gospel circles, a joyful declaration of being completely caught up in God's love. It didn't need billboard recognition to become a hit. It spread from pew to pew, radio to radio, until it was cemented as a gospel classic. What set Cleophas apart was his authenticity. He never chased commercial fame or tried to water down his sound to fit popular trends. He stayed true to his roots, keeping his music pure, spiritual, and deeply emotional. Among gospel greats, he earned immense respect, not because he sought the spotlight, but because his light naturally shined through every note he sang and every sermon he preached. The Barrett Sisters. The Barrett Sisters weren't just a gospel trio, they were a force of pure harmony straight from the heart of Chicago. Deloise, Billy, and Rhodessa Barrett grew up singing in church, and from the very beginning, their voices blended with a heavenly perfection that could make an entire congregation fall silent. It wasn't just music, it was ministry. Their voices didn't compete, they completed each other, creating one sound made of three souls. Their signature song, Jesus Will Work It Out, became an anthem for faith and perseverance throughout the 1960s and 1970s. If you grew up in church during that era, you didn't just hear that song, you felt it. The Barrett Sisters didn't rely on flashy instruments or studio tricks. Their harmonies were the music. When they sang about trusting God through hardship, every note carried conviction. You couldn't help but believe that, yes, Jesus really would work it out. At the height of their fame, the trio toured internationally, appeared on television, and performed at major church conventions. They were even featured in gospel documentaries, celebrated as one of the purest embodiments of traditional gospel sound. But as gospel music evolved in the late 70s and beyond, the spotlight shifted to more modern styles. Still, the Barrett Sisters never chased fame. They kept doing what they loved most, singing in churches, small gatherings, and community events, reminding audiences everywhere that gospel wasn't about charts or trends. It was about faith, soul, and the power of a song to lift weary hearts.
Milton Brunson.
Milton Brunson and the Thompson Community Singers, the Tommies. I want to be so available to him that everything I do, God gets the credit for it. That was the heart of Reverend Milton Brunson, the Chicago pastor and musical visionary who forever changed gospel music. Alongside his powerhouse choir, the Thompson Community Singers, lovingly known as the Tommies, Brunson created a sound that was both deeply spiritual and soul-stirring. If you grew up in the church, chances are you've heard their timeless anthem, Available to You. More than just a gospel hit, it became a universal testimony, a song that every choir wanted to sing, every congregation felt deep in their spirit. When those opening notes played, you could feel the sanctuary shift. Reverend Brunson formed the Tommies in the 1960s, gathering everyday people from Chicago's South Side, teachers, students, mothers, fathers, uniting them through the power of music and ministry. Their sound was raw, emotional, and drenched in that unmistakable gospel anointing. Under Brunson's leadership, they became a living example of faith in harmony. When Available to You was released in the 1980s, it touched millions. The message of surrendering your life to God and offering yourself completely to His service resonated far beyond church walls. Every performance felt like a prayer wrapped in song. The lead vocalists didn't just sing, they ministered, taking listeners on a spiritual journey every single time. Throughout the years, the Tommies became one of the most respected choirs in the nation. They performed with gospel greats, filled concert halls, and collected numerous awards. But more than the accolades, it was Reverend Brunson's passion, humility, and unwavering devotion that made their legacy shine. Then, in 1997, tragedy struck. Reverend Milton Brunson passed away, leaving a void that shook the gospel community to its core. Though the Tommies continued for a time, the flame that kept them burning brightest dimmed without their leader. Yet the music, and the message, live on. Every time Available to You is sung, His Spirit echoes through every note, reminding the world what it truly means to give your all to God.
The Truthettes.
The Truthettes were a vibrant, all-female gospel group that lit up the 1980s with their infectious energy and soulful harmonies. Their breakout hit, Peeping in the Window, wasn't just a song, it was a sermon with a groove. Blending humor, sass, and sharp spiritual insight, the track called out the busybodies who spent more time judging others than minding their own hearts. Wrapped in catchy rhythms and delivered with fiery conviction, it became an anthem across gospel circles, earning the Truthettes a devoted following and solidifying them as one of the most recognizable female gospel groups of their era. What made them special was their fearless approach. Unlike the traditional buttoned-up church choirs of the time, the Truthettes brought attitude, laughter, and an irresistible stage presence. They made gospel fun, without losing the message. Audiences couldn't get enough of their authenticity and boldness. Though they released a few more beloved tracks, none matched the cultural spark of Peeping in the Window. As the 1980s gave way to a new wave of urban and contemporary gospel, the Truthettes' classic sound didn't quite fit the changing trends. They never compromised their style, but the spotlight eventually dimmed. Still, for those who remember, their legacy shines as a joyful reminder that gospel can preach, groove, and make you laugh, all at the same time.
Keith Wonderboy Johnson.
Keith Wonderboy Johnson wasn't just another gospel singer, he was a force of pure joy and faith. Born with a voice that could lift a congregation to its feet, Keith earned his nickname Wonderboy as a child prodigy, wowing audiences long before most kids his age could even carry a tune. People said you didn't just hear him sing, you felt it in your soul. By the early 2000s, Keith had carved out a unique place in gospel music. He masterfully blended the traditional quartet style, rooted in handclaps, harmony, and heart, with a fresh, upbeat modern energy. That sound bridged generations, drawing in both old-school churchgoers and a new wave of young gospel fans. His signature hit, I Made It, became an anthem of perseverance and faith. With its infectious groove, soaring vocals, and powerful message about surviving life's storms through God's grace, the song dominated gospel radio and made Keith a household name. For a moment, it seemed he was destined to become one of the biggest stars in modern gospel. He toured nationwide, lit up award shows, and kept the music flowing with album after album. But despite his steady output, none of his later songs struck the same universal chord as I Made It. Still, within the quartet community, Keith Wonderboy Johnson remained a legend, a man whose voice, passion, and faith left a lasting echo in the world of gospel music. Evelyn Turrentine-Agee. Evelyn Turrentine-Agee delivered one of the most soul-stirring gospel anthems of the early 2000s, God Did It. The title alone carries power, but when Evelyn sang it, you didn't just hear the words, you felt them deep in your spirit. It's the kind of song that makes you want to lift your hands, close your eyes, and thank God for every mountain you've climbed and every storm you've survived. Before God Did It, Evelyn had already been faithfully singing gospel for years, but that song changed everything. It was raw, electrifying, and overflowing with passion. When she performed it, it wasn't just music, it was ministry. You could hear her testimony in every note, every shout, every breath. The message was simple yet profound. God really did it. The song caught fire across the gospel world. It dominated radio stations, filled church choirs, and echoed in sanctuaries nationwide. It even earned her awards, all without the backing of a major label. That's how powerful it was. Word of mouth and genuine love from the gospel community turned it into a phenomenon. Yet, despite her success, Evelyn never chased the spotlight. She didn't crave fame or headlines. Instead, she stayed grounded, continuing to sing, record, and perform, but always with a focus on ministry over celebrity. No flashy media tours, no endless album rollouts, just pure, heartfelt worship. And that's what made Evelyn Turrentine-Agee more than just a gospel artist. She became a vessel, someone who reminded the world that when you trust God, He truly does do it.
Dottie Peoples.
Dottie Peoples became a household name thanks to one unforgettable song every churchgoer seems to know, On Time God. Whether you first heard it in church, on the radio, or during someone's emotional testimony, that song turned into a gospel anthem that still sends chills down spines decades later. Released in the 1990s, it exploded across the gospel world. Its powerful hook, He may not come when you want Him, but He'll be there right on time, became more than lyrics. It became a saying, a comfort, and a declaration of faith. With her rich, soulful voice leading the way, Dottie delivered that old-school gospel energy that made people shout, cry, and dance all at once. But On Time God wasn't her beginning, it was the culmination of years of hard work. She had grown up singing in church, later explored jazz and R&B, but her heart always led her back to gospel. When she released that song, it felt divinely timed, a message the world truly needed to hear. After that monumental hit, Dottie continued performing, recording albums, and inspiring audiences at women's conferences and gospel events. Yet, no matter how many songs followed, On Time God remained her defining masterpiece, a timeless reminder that faith may not move on our schedule, but it always arrives right on time.
Helen Baylor.
Helen Baylor's story is one of the most powerful and soul-stirring testimonies in all of gospel music. Her signature song, Sold Out, wasn't just a hit, it was her confession, her redemption, and her rebirth wrapped in melody. Through it, Helen laid bare her battles with addiction, heartbreak, and the saving grace that pulled her back from the edge. It wasn't polished or pretty, it was real, raw, and deeply human. Before her gospel transformation, Helen started as an R&B singer in the 1970s, sharing stages with legends like Chaka Khan and Stevie Wonder. She had the voice, the charisma, and the star power, but behind the bright lights, her private life was falling apart. Addiction haunted her for years, dragging her through cycles of pain and relapse. Yet, out of that darkness came her defining moment of faith. When Helen returned to music, she didn't just perform, she testified. Sold Out became her anthem of surrender, declaring total devotion to God and freedom from the chains of her past. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had truly lived every word she sang, strong, soulful, and soaked in truth. Listeners didn't just applaud her music, they felt her deliverance. From there, Helen became known not just as a gospel artist, but as a living testimony. She sang at churches, recovery events, and Christian conferences, sharing her story of redemption with raw honesty. Though her later releases never matched the success of Sold Out, her impact was already sealed. Proof that faith can turn even the deepest pain into a powerful ministry. Now it's your turn. Which gospel song still gives you chills every single time? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this.